Not all data is as it seems. Thanks so much for joining me on this next installment of Making Sense of Science with Dr. Jess. I'm Jess Stokes-Parish. I'm a researcher, educator, and critical appraisal enthusiast. In this series, we're breaking down research papers, uncovering red flags, and sharpening our skills to critically assess the health information that we read. Whether you're a student or a health professional or just someone who loves myth busting, then this place is for you. In this week's episode, we're looking at a paper that compares folate supplementation in pregnant women. This paper is described as a comparison study between folic acid versus L-methylfolate supplementation in Egyptian women experiencing recurrent miscarriages. This paper was brought to my attention by Steph at _dietologist over on Instagram. As usual, I'll run through the CRABS framework and deep dive into the critical appraisal of this study. Pay close attention because this paper is not all as it seems. Starting off with the C in CRABS, C is for conflict of interest. The author declares no conflict of interest. For references, we'll come back to this one because this is going to require a huge deep dive. The A for author is very difficult to track down. The paper cites the author as being from the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Alexandria University in Egypt. However, there are multiple same names at this university with other expertise like law, media, and engineering. So I'm not sure if this is just a very popular name. But when I looked into it, the author has published at least 5 papers on gynecology in the same journal, and it does appear to be affiliated with a private clinic in Alexandria, Egypt. Most of their papers seem to be single author. However, there are a couple that are with a group of researchers. This one has the potential to be quite buzzy. It's about a very controversial topic, the MTHFR. Yes, it is, as you read it, gene and folic acid supplementation. So I do read that with a little bit of caution. S for scope. It's a little bit difficult to make a judgment on this based on the lack of information available on the author, and it's unclear if they have relevant training or research background to be conducting research in this area. Let's dive straight into this paper. The R for referencing. This journal website formatting is pretty odd. That's the first thing that catches my eye. The journal publisher is listed as SCIRP, which is SCIRP, who Wikipedia lists as being a predatory publisher. Sidebar. Predatory publishers deliberately deceive scientists and the public by appearing scientific, but having aggressive email tactics to solicit papers and research. They forego peer review and have very poor transparency about quality assurance processes. Here are some examples of emails sent to me from other predatory publishers. They want to publish and they want to publish fast. In fact, you can actually see that I'm getting invitations to publish in fields of research that are way outside of my scope of practice, both clinically and in terms of research. Predatory publishers are extremely cunning. They take advantage of vulnerable researchers who live in a publish or perish culture. That is, researchers who need a certain amount of publications each year to be considered successful or to be eligible for promotion. They often have targets of how many publications they have to produce each year. Junior or naive researchers are also targets. In my view, predatory publishers are the equivalent of phone scammers. They offer something that is way too good to be true to people in a vulnerable predicament in exchange for a fee. They have absolutely no interest in ensuring research is of a certain standard. They just want to scam you into paying a fee. Signs that a publisher might be predatory include the short time frame between submission and publishing, grammatical errors or poor copy editing, no indexing, and the editorial board consisting of retired scholars or even people that don't even know that they're on the editorial board. So, as you can see, there's a huge reason to be skeptical about the validity of this research right from the beginning. Did the study actually happen? Did anyone peer review it? We have no way of knowing. Now, let me tell you all the ways that this paper is sketchy. Let's go straight to the methods. First, I'm looking for a description of the study aims and method. The aim of the study is to predict the potential benefit of the use of methylfolate instead of the use of the regular folic acid for patients with MTHFR gene mutation with a history of recurrent pregnancy loss to prevent abortion and to decrease incidence of associated pregnancy complications. Whew. There is a clear participant group and outcome, but the phrasing of predict benefit of use is kind of strange, but more on that later. In my eyes, the research question is poorly formulated, and to top it off, they've included no hypothesis in their description of the methods itself. There's also no real description of the method of research used, other than the title, which says comparison study. Instead, the methods describe the procedure taken in a somewhat vague way. The best that I can make out from this is that this was a supplementation comparison study. Because there's a comparison study, I now look for the process of randomization and blinding, which are important for reducing bias from the participant and researcher. And unfortunately, there's no description of either, which means that there's a high likelihood of bias in the results. The description of statistical analysis is what I'm looking at next, and it also gives me cause for alarm, with strange phrasing like data was collected and entered into the personal computer. Now, this could be a sign of the author not having English as their first language, but then it's also a sign that there's not great copy editing, which is that red flag around predatory publishers. They do the usual array of descriptive statistics, that is, means and standard deviations, and they use some fairly typical methods to compare the mean results between groups. But there were no power calculations, that is, there was no calculation of what sample sizes were needed to detect an effect, which also decreases the reliability of the result. We just don't know if the results are true or not, or whether they're a result of artifact or bias. Remember my comment about predict benefit of use and how strange that was? In statistical language, predict normally refers to modeling or regression analyses. And that's just not here. So I'm wondering why they've said that they'd like to predict the benefit of use. More broadly, the results are really poorly presented. They really only report group percentages, and they don't present the full data from the t-tests or statistical analyses. And let me be clear, I'm not a statistician by any means, but these are the things that I'm looking for and seeing missing, which leads me to have more red flags. In the discussion, there is some comparison of other research, which is good, but because the data here is quite flawed, an accurate comparison really can't be made. And in my search of related data, I found this study, a literature review of folic acid versus methylfolate supplementation, where they cautiously recommend methylfolate as being preferred in some circumstances. But this paper, it didn't follow very good scientific practice for reviews, so you would question the reliability of their analysis. And the big red flag here, it was funded by an Italian pharmaceutical company that makes a supplement with methylfolate for pregnancy. So what's the verdict? Well, there's no real way to sugarcoat this. This paper is terrible. If you're using this study to inform your clinical practice, I would heavily caution against it, and you should probably stop using it to guide your practice. It's riddled with a high risk of bias, terrible statistics, and it's questionable that it even occurred. This study does not provide convincing evidence to choose methylfolate over folic acid for supplementation in pregnant women with recurring miscarriages. Well, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into folic acid versus methylfolate, and we got a crash course on predatory publishing by the side. I'd love to know your thoughts or observations in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'd love to see you here again, and if you want more critical appraisal tips, head on over to my website or visit @J_Stokes-Parish for more bite-sized breakdowns.